He paid me to marry him. I never expected him to cry on our anniversary. I never imagined my life would turn into a transaction. The day he placed that glossy contract in front of me, the world seemed to stop spinning. His pen tapped against the paper, steady, ruthless, as if he were closing another business deal. And yet this was my life. My future. My body. My heart. Marry me. 1 year. 10 million. That was all he said. No warmth. No smile. No promise of love. First I laughed bitterly. Who in their right mind would buy a bride? Who in their right mind would sell themselves into marriage? But when I looked at my mother's face, pale, weak, fighting for every breath in a hospital bed, I realized laughter wasn't a luxury I could afford. So with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, I picked up the pen. And in that single stroke of ink, my fate was sealed. The wedding came quickly, coldly, like an arrangement signed and delivered. There was no bouquet. No friends cheering. No kiss that made my heart flutter. Only cameras flashing for the press, his hand gripping mine like a possession he had acquired. That night, as I lay in the enormous bed of his mansion, staring at the gold chandelier above me, I promised myself one thing. Don't fall for him. He's not yours. He will never be yours. Days turned into weeks and weeks bled into months. The mansion was silent except for the echo of my own footsteps. He was always working, always out of reach, always hiding behind the armor of a man who needed no one. I told myself I didn't care. That I only needed his money, not his heart. But hearts are treacherous. Mine especially. Every accidental brush of his hand, every rare glance when his eyes softened, every moment he shielded me from gossiping tongues at banquets, it all chipped away at the walls I had built. I hated myself for noticing. I hated myself for wanting more. Because more was never part of the deal. And yet, exactly 1 year later, on the night of our anniversary, the man who once paid me to marry him, the man who claimed to feel nothing, the man who stood like a stone wall between us, collapsed in front of me. And to my shock, tears glistened in his cold, dark eyes. Why was the man who bought me now begging me not to leave? I was only 24 when the weight of the world collapsed on my shoulders. My father had abandoned us years ago, leaving behind debts that clung to us like chains. My mother was all I had left, but her health was failing, and each day in the hospital drained what little money I had left. I worked 3 jobs: waitress, tutor, cashier. I barely slept. My hands blistered from washing dishes, my feet ached from standing 12 hours straight. Yet still the bills piled higher. Every night I sat in my tiny rented room, staring at the hospital invoices, wondering how I would ever survive. It was during one of those nights that he appeared. A man whose name made others tremble. The CEO whose empire stretched across the city. Rumors painted him as a ruthless king. Merciless in business, cold in love, untouchable. And yet, for some reason, he sought me out. Our first meeting wasn't romantic. It wasn't even kind. It was clinical. He looked at me like I was another line on a contract. His suit perfect, his expression unreadable, his words sharp as ice. Be my wife for 1 year. No love, no emotions, no obligations beyond appearances. In return, you'll get money, status, and freedom from your debts. I should have walked away. Any woman with self-respect would have. But when I thought of my mother hooked to machines, her smile fading as she whispered, "Don't worry about me, just live your life," my pride shattered. I agreed. Our wedding was beautiful in the eyes of the world, but inside I felt hollow. The cameras flashed, the guests applauded, but behind the veil my eyes burned with unshed tears. He stood beside me, regal, handsome, untouchable, but so far away, as if an invisible wall separated us. The nights that followed were colder than winter. We shared a roof but not a life. He stayed in his study, drowning in work, while I wandered through endless hallways of marble and glass. I told myself it didn't matter. After all, love was never part of the deal. But hearts are traitors. Mine betrayed me slowly, quietly. When he shielded me from humiliating whispers at a banquet. When he left a cup of ginger tea outside my room the night I was sick. When I caught him looking at me, not as a possession but almost as if I mattered. And that terrified me. Because the closer I got to him, the more I knew. This contract was not going to end cleanly. The mansion sparkled like a palace, but to me it was a gilded cage. I wore diamonds, but my heart felt like glass, fragile, ready to shatter at the smallest touch. Everywhere I went, people reminded me of what I really was. At company banquets, women draped in silk would eye me with thin smiles. Their whispers were sharp knives cutting into my back. She's just a contract bride. She'll disappear after a year. He'll never love someone like her. I pretended not to hear. I smiled through the humiliation, telling myself it was temporary. But inside, the words dug deep, leaving scars. What hurt more wasn't their cruelty. It was his silence. He never once defended me. He never told them to stop. He let me stand there, painted in shame, while he carried on with his glass of wine as if I didn't exist. I told myself not to care, that his coldness was part of the deal. But the truth? Every time he turned away, my heart cracked a little more. And then one night everything changed. I was searching for a document in his study when I stumbled across a folder carelessly left on his desk. Inside, my breath caught divorce papers. My name. My details. My marriage. All neatly typed out. The signature line for him was already filled. His handwriting, sharp and bold, sprawled across the page. The date was set for exactly 1 year from our wedding day. My hands trembled as I held the papers. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. To him, I was nothing but a countdown. An expiration date. I wanted to scream, to rip those papers apart and demand why. But instead, I sat in that cold study, staring at the ink that had already erased me. When he walked in and saw me holding the papers, his eyes darkened. I expected indifference, maybe anger. But what I didn't expect was the way he rushed forward, snatching the folder away, his voice rough, almost desperate. "Don't go." My heart stopped. For a man who once claimed he didn't believe in love, why did his voice sound like it was breaking? Why did his hand grip mine so tightly, as if he was terrified of losing me? And if he didn't care, why did his eyes look as if they were hiding something he could no longer control? Our anniversary came like the ticking of a clock striking midnight. For a year, I told myself it was just business. For a year, I pretended his silence didn't hurt. His distance didn't matter. For a year, I counted the days until I could finally be free. And yet, when the night arrived, freedom didn't feel like relief. Felt like heartbreak. He reserved a private restaurant, elegant and quiet, far from the flashing cameras that always followed him. I wore the red dress he had left in my closet with a note. No words, only his signature. I told myself I wore it out of convenience, but deep down I knew it was because I wanted him to see me. The table was lit by candles, their flames flickering between us like fragile hope. The air was heavy, almost suffocating, as if both of us knew this was the end. We sat in silence, our forks untouched, the clock on the wall ticking louder with every second. Then, as he raised his glass, I noticed his hand trembling. I thought it was my imagination until I looked closer. His jaw was tight, his eyes darker than I had ever seen them. And then the impossible happened. The man known across the city as ruthless, unshakable, cold as steel broke. His voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. "I thought I could live without love. But I can't live without you." The words hit me harder than any insult, harder than any contract. For a moment I couldn't breathe. And then I saw it, tears glistening at the corners of his eyes. Real. Uncontrollable. His mask of power shattered into pieces right in front of me. This man who had once thrown a contract in my face was now begging with nothing but his heart. His confession spilled out between sobs he couldn't contain. He admitted he had never intended for our marriage to be just a transaction. He had wanted me from the start. But fear made him hide behind business terms. Fear of rejection. Fear of not being enough. Fear of needing someone so badly that losing them would destroy him. The tears rolled down his face, landing on the contract he had brought with him that night, the same one meant to end us. His trembling hands pushed it across the table again, but this time, his voice shook with desperation. "Don't sign it. Please stay." I sat frozen, staring at the man across from me, the man who once reduced me to a contract, who now sat with tears running down his face, his pride shattered. For so long, I convinced myself I was nothing more than an arrangement to him, a temporary placeholder until he found someone worthy. But in that moment, when his voice cracked and his eyes pleaded, I saw the truth. He wasn't the unfeeling monster the world believed him to be. He was a man, broken, terrified of love, terrified of losing the one thing he couldn't buy. And somehow that one thing was me. My heart ached as I remembered every lonely night in the mansion, every whispered insult at the banquets, every time he stood silent while I drowned in humiliation. I could have walked away. I could have torn the contract, claimed my freedom, and never looked back. But then I remembered the small things. The ginger tea left by my door when I was sick. The umbrella he held over me in the rain, though he never said a word. The way his gaze lingered when he thought I wasn't looking. Those weren't the actions of a man who felt nothing. They were the quiet cries of someone who didn't know how to love. I reached across the table, my fingers brushing the back of his trembling hand. His breath hitched as if he expected me to pull away. But instead I whispered words that surprised even me. "Then don't let me go." His eyes widened, the tears spilling faster. And for the first time in our year together he smiled. Not the cold, polite smile he showed the world, but a raw, unguarded smile meant only for me. That night, we burned the contract in the fireplace. The flames devoured the paper that once defined us, leaving nothing but ashes. Our marriage no longer began with a signature, it began with a choice. A choice to stay. A choice to risk. Choice to love. I learned something that night. Money can bind two people together, but only love has the power to set them free. And as I watched him fall asleep beside me, his hand still clutching mine as if afraid I would vanish, I realized something even greater. I had entered this marriage for survival. But I stayed because, against all odds, I had found a home in his heart. If you believe love can bloom even in the most unexpected places, don't just watch, stay with me. Like, subscribe, and join me for more stories that turn pain into destiny.